Welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off. There's been a lot of noise over the last couple of days regarding Elliot Anderson. So we're going to run through who said what. We'll try and make heads or tails of going out. But to be completely truthful with you, I think there's been a lot of noise without any substance. And I'll explain what I mean once we've ran through it. So first of all, the Mirror saying Man City believe they have won the race to sign Elliot Anderson and are confident of a £65 million deal. The 23-year-old has let it be known that the Etihad Stadium is his preferred choice and City are keen to get a deal over the line before the World Cup. So that was originally reported from the Mirror. I'd be very shocked if anyone gets a deal done with Elliot Anderson. Fabrizio Romano was actually saying that all the talk around fees are way out of reality, because the reality is nobody is in negotiations with Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest have not let it known what price they want for Elliot Anderson. And as we go through the reports, there are more reports suggesting that actually they would welcome a bit of a bidding war between United and Man City, which follows on what I was saying the other day in a previous video, that it must be nice when clubs get Man United and Man City both going for a player, because you've got a team with all the money in Manchester City that can pay high agent fees and high transfer fees and high salaries and stuff, and then you've got United in the past that used to overpay for a lot of players and spaff a lot of money up the wall as well. I think we're better at that now. We are going to be a little bit more sensible under Ineos, but it must be a dream for a club when you get both clubs competing and fighting for the same player, because why would you not want to try to milk that situation and get every single penny that you can between both clubs? So Romano's saying any talk about figures and stuff is exaggerated. Nobody knows at this moment in time what the price would actually be for Elliot Anderson. But again, the Mirror saying that City believe that they have won the race for him. Sticking with Romano, though, he said Man City have been very serious and actively working on signing Elliot Anderson since February, with ongoing conversations involving the players' camp and advancing negotiations. City are pushing hard, though nothing is finalised yet on fees and agreements, which is what I just mentioned. United are also attentive in keeping him on their midfield shortlist as a potential target this summer, making it one of the key battles to watch in the upcoming transfer window. Now, that's never good to hear from Fabrizio Romano. As somebody who wants Elliot Anderson, I think he'd be a fantastic signing. When you hear Fabrizio Romano, one of the best transfer journalists around in the world, suggesting that City are in advanced talks and United are just are keeping him on their midfield shortlist, sounds really bad. It sounds like we're just sitting around twiddling our fingers, not doing anything, and just allowing Manchester City to steal a march and do all the negotiations and do all the aggressive. And it's just a play on words, right? Because the reality is, if Anderson is our top target, which is widely perceived that he is, I cannot see in any world where United would not also be trying their hardest to get this deal done and just allow Manchester City a free run. And until the deal's done, we're still in the race and still in the conversation, because we must be getting some sort of encouragement that he'd be okay to come. Otherwise, we would have pulled out by now and would start working on our alternative targets. And I don't think that's happened yet. So while it's never nice to hear that from Romano saying that Man City are pushing, but United have just got him on their list and are monitoring the situation, which sounds like we're doing F all, I don't actually think that's the case. I think United are doing things, we're just doing it a lot more secretively to what we were used to doing, and we're not shouting about these things from the rooftop like we used to. Graham Bailey said that Nottingham Forest are adamant that no deal is in place for Elliot Anderson. The club are actively encouraging a summer bidding war despite the belief he is heading to Manchester City. So even if that's what I was saying earlier, Forest are going to want Man City and Man United to try to outbid each other for Elliot Anderson, because they're just going to get a bigger bang for their buck, which is why getting the players buy-in, I think for this deal, you get the players buy-in, it's going to make things a lot easier, which sounds obvious, but it's what happened with Mbeumo, where we got the players buy-in, try to get a deal done with Brentford. They tried to allow other teams to come in and bid, i.e. Tottenham at the time, and it was Mbeumo that was adamant and had to stick by his guns to say, no, I'm not interested in talking to Tottenham, I only want to go to United, which sort of scuppered Brentford's plan at that time, because they wanted to get us and Tottenham and other teams bidding for Mbeumo to get more money. And I think Nottingham Forest would be stupid to not try to do that when you've got both the Manchester clubs coming in for one of their players. Then we've had a report from Fraser Fletcher saying that Manchester United have intensified their pursuit of Nottingham Forest midfielder Elliot Anderson in recent weeks, with club officials working hard to persuade the England international that Old Trafford represents the ideal next step in his career. So this is a reporter suggesting that United have actually started to intensify our pursuit going for Elliot Anderson, Does, though, say in the report, in Forest's assessment, Man City currently hold the strongest position to land Anderson thanks to proactive discussions with his representatives and a clear project under the current board that appeals to his ambitions, and maybe the uncertainty around our manager situation and the club and stuff. Maybe that'll be a factor when it comes to the deal, but there is a lot of uncertainty about Manchester City with all the charges, Pep Guardiola's future. So I don't think they're any more certain than us at this particular moment in time. But, you know, as a safer bet, with the league positions and Champions League football, City would be a much safer bet at this moment. But, you know, I still think there's a lot of uncertainty around their situation. Goes on to say in the report, though, however, Man United remain determined and are prepared to challenge aggressively. A package in the region of £100 million is understood to be the threshold required to tempt Forest into serious negotiations, reflecting the player's contract until 2029 and his rising stock as an England international. So Fraser Fletcher suggesting that we have started to make moves, started to have our talks ourselves, but also are prepared to challenge aggressively. Now, Ben Jacobs, I thought, summarised the situation up quite well, saying that don't buy into reports claiming Elliot Anderson hasn't had contact with Manchester United. Talks have likely taken place. And what I think Ben Jacobs was effectively saying, which is what I mentioned there, is that if Elliot Anderson is our top target and Manchester City are in active talk conversations with his agency, then what makes you think that United are just sat around twiddling our thumbs, allowing that to happen? We must be getting some encouragement from the agency side because we're not out of the running just yet. And I do think that we are in conversations, or we've already held those conversations as well. It's never nice, though. It's still not positive. And I'm not saying that we're going to go get Elliot Anderson, because my feeling is he's still going to go to Manchester City, having said all of that. But I just think it's a play on word. And my whole take on the situation is I don't think we're any further forward than where we were a few weeks ago. It's always been perceived that Elliot Anderson was a favourite to go to Manchester City, but United want him, and we're going to do all we can to try and get him. But ultimately, it will come down to the player. Where he decides to want to go, he might decide to go to Manchester City, in which case we're powerless to do anything about that because it's the player's preference at the end of the day. But I don't buy into the narrative that we're not doing anything. I think that we are doing. We're just not shouting it from the rooftops like the previous regime used to, because we've had so many stories recently where we've been made multiple contact with agents and players much further after they've actually been done. And I think we are doing things in secret. That's my personal opinion anyway. I know some of you are going to disagree with that, but you can let me know in the comments what you think. Now, what happens if we don't go for Anderson? Because there is a possibility we don't get Elliot Anderson, because like I said, the narrative still is that Manchester City are the favourites. Nothing's really changed from any of those reports. The other player that we're perceived to be going for, potentially going to look at if we don't get Anderson, is Tonali. So let's go for the latest there. So firstly, Ben Jacobs did a piece with Alex Crooked saying that Manchester United aren't as enthusiastic on signing Tonali due to his high wage and fee. They believe they would not be getting their money's worth with him. Adam Wharton has been deemed too similar as a profile as Kobe Mainoo, leading to him being almost completely discarded. So that's interesting. I mean, I would like to get Wharton. What's wrong with having Wharton and Mainoo as rotation options? But I do think that that's probably fair. I think Wharton and Mainoo would be. I'd be worried about that as a midfield pairing, because I still think it lacks a little bit of athleticism. You'd get ball quality though, and I suppose maybe that depends on who the new manager is. What if we go for a manager that wants possession of the football? In which case, someone like Wharton and Mainoo might make sense. But if you want someone that wants to be a little bit more progressive or a little bit more energy in midfield, higher pressing, for example, then I can see why that wouldn't necessarily work as a pairing. But you know, I don't think, you know, why not create competition within the squad? Having Wharton and Mainoo to rotate for a season would be pretty good, but you'd need two number sixes there. Interestingly, on Tonali, saying they're not as enthusiastic to go for Tonali because he is going to cost a lot of money and it's going to be higher wages probably. But I think the narrative around Tonali is United are just not going to get, like, putting it out there that we're, you know, around the price, because Newcastle are going to demand like £100 million, and we're trying to drive that price down by saying, look, we're not paying that straight away. So setting our stall out immediately, saying we're not going to pay £100 million for Sandro Tonali because of his age. And obviously higher cost probably with agent fee and salary as well. Now, there's been another report, though, from the Mail saying that Manchester United are expected to be the 25-year-old's next club if everything falls into place. So this is a piece that they did on where players are likely to go, what deals are likely going to be in the summer, saying that it's expected that Tonali would come to United or be a United player if everything falls into place. Interestingly, though, did say that United sounded out Palace's Adam Wharton and Brighton's Carlos Baleba for their shortlist, as they want two midfielders this summer. The Baleba noise has gone a little bit quiet recently. We know that we've had personal terms agreed with him or won't be a problem. Going off the narrative, I think Ben Jacobs is saying that it's 50-50 whether we would go for Baleba, maybe as the second midfielder, but it would, again, that's going to largely depend on the price that Brighton dropped the asking price right down to 50 million or something like that. Then maybe we'd go for Baleba. But if you've got someone like João Gomez that could be available for less than that or around that, then it'd be a no-brainer for me to go for João Gomez. But we'll wait and see on the Baleba news. But going back to Tonali though, or sticking with Tonali. There's also been a report from Sammy Motbell from the BBC saying that Newcastle are expected to sell at least one key player this summer to fund squad reinforcement. Players like Sandro, Tonali, Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes and Livramento are already attracting Premier League interest. Man United are reportedly targeting Bruno G and Tonali, although I think the Bruno Guimaraes one is less likely because of the age factor and the high cost. If he was loads cheaper, then maybe we would look at Bruno G, despite his age, but the fact it's going to be big money for an older player, I don't think the club want to go down that route. Tonali feels more realistic, and if Newcastle are in a position where they're going to have to sell some of their players, that could be an opportunity. But I think what's going on with the Tonali situation is, Newcastle are putting it out there that they want £100 million. United are putting it out there saying we're not going to pay that sort of price because, we would maybe for Anderson because he's younger and they see him as the top priority and the top target. But if we don't get him and we do then go for Tonali, I think we're already putting it out there that we're not going to go anywhere near that sort of £100 million mark for him. Ben Jacobs then has also said it's not that Sandro Tonali is unlikely. He's unlikely if Manchester United can land Elliot Anderson. So Tonali is slightly older and viewed as less value for money compared to Anderson. Meanwhile, Bruno Guimaraes' high valuation from Newcastle United, along with his age, has made Manchester United reluctant to pursue a move in the summer despite a meeting with his agent. So it looks like Bruno G is off the table. I mean, we might pivot back to it depending on Newcastle's situation, or later on in the transfer window, if you don't get your targets, it's still nice to have an option like Bruno Guimaraes there as a backup or on your midfield shortlist, but that seems less likely. But also, I think saying that Tonali's unlikely if we go for Anderson, so because we're not going to go for two expensive midfielders, it's going to be one expensive midfielder, one cheaper midfielder, and then maybe a younger midfielder as the third midfield option, or an opportunity if someone like Fernandes, for example, goes down and becomes available. Maybe we'll look at that, or João Gomez. That type of player is what it seems. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. On Fernandes, there's been a lot of noise regarding him. So Mateus Fernandes has been linked with a move to Manchester United, with reports suggesting Bruno Fernandes has recommended him. However, talk of an exit is considered premature, and West Ham are determined to keep him, though that could change if they are relegated. And then there's been a report from Graham Bailey suggesting that sources close to the London Stadium have told Team Talk that the club do not envisage losing Fernandes under any circumstances this summer. Even if they were to suffer relegation, he is seen as a player to build around. That position is reflected in their valuation. Team Talk can reveal that West Ham would demand in excess of £50 million for Fernandes, factoring in his age, potential, and the fact he's tied to a long contract till 2030. And I did a Fernandes video, and I did feel that he's not going to be one of those cheap deals. He's going to be, they paid £40 million for him. They're probably going to want more than that, even if they do get relegated. But relegation does change things. I think, again, this is one of those stories where club putting out there, we're not selling this player, and just to strengthen their negotiation stance when it comes to the summer, because I think if they do get relegated, then it's open season on a lot of their players, because their players are going to want to leave and put in transfer requests. We don't know if they've got relegation clauses in their contracts and so on and so forth. So again, I think that's just a story West Ham saying, no, we're determined to keep Fernandes, because if they know big clubs are going to be interested in their player, they're just going to start. It just gives them a better position to negotiate from, I think, in the summer. And that's what I think's going on with a lot of these stories. It's just noise without substance is the way I would go through those updates. Fernandes, West Ham want to keep Fernandes, brilliant, but until you get relegated or until you have a club come and put some money on the table, I'd question that. Tonali's our backup to Elliot Anderson, but we'd be reluctant to pay the sort of money for Tonali that will likely have to pay for Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson's our top target, but Man City still seem to be the favourites, and that's pretty much where we are with those updates. So, but get involved in the comments and let me know your thoughts and feelings regarding those. Been a lot of noise over the last couple of days as well regarding another midfield target, which is Stiller. So Man United have identified Stuttgart star Angelo Stiller as genuine midfield option. Sources are confirming that Stiller has been watched closely through 2026. Stuttgart are open to selling with an initial valuation of around £50 million. Christopher Vivel is known to be a strong admirer and has has extensive knowledge of Stiller's profile, making him a natural candidate as United prepare for a major midfield overhaul. And I think Florian Plettenberg came out, clarifying the situation around his release clause and stuff, which if you watch the Stiller video that I'd done, it's like £40 million, but Stuttgart can buy him out of that contract for £2 million, which means it is going to be a little bit more expensive than his release clause. But he's a name that potentially we could pivot to if we don't get Anderson and we walk away from Tonali because of his price. But if United, I would say, if United are questioning Wharton and his availability to fit alongside Kobbie Mainoo, then surely that's going to be the same feeling with Angelo Stiller, because I don't see that. I see them as similar profiles of player almost, where more of the ball playing progressive midfielders, but less all action, less defensive, tackling, dueling, that sort of thing. I would put Stiller and Wharton in a very similar bracket for that. And if they're worried about Wharton and Mainoo playing together, then surely they would have the same concerns with Stiller and Wharton playing together, which is why that Wharton one makes very little sense if you go off of these reports. Ben Jacobs was saying that Angelo Stiller remains on Manchester United's midfield shortlist, but the club are leaning towards more Premier League proven options. Though a move isn't ruled out, Stuttgart can activate a release clause can activate the clause to override his release clause, which we know about anyway regarding that. So Stiller is still a name on the potential list, but he never really went off the list, to be fair. It's just, he's not seen as the priority transfer target. But if we don't get Anderson, as I mentioned, if we walk away from Tonali because of the price, and we're put off by Bruno Guimaraes' age and his price, and you're starting to go down the sort of short list of players, then obviously that would make Stiller a little bit more viable, but we'll keep an eye on it. Now, another player that's come up from, I don't want to say from nowhere, but not been mentioned for a while, but had been linked with in the past, is Onana. Manchester United have targeted Aston Villa midfielder Amadou Onana as a priority signing this summer, with Villa open to offers for the Belgian. Now, that came from Ekrem Konar, who is not the most credible source of information. If you're a subscriber or watched any previous videos, he links us with about a bazillion players, and I'm yet to be convinced whether any of them have actually came true. One day he'll get it right, but you just never know. Sasha Tavalire, who again is a medium source, hit and miss. Quite good, or normally quite accurate, though, to be fair, when it comes specifically to Belgian players. Works for Sky Sports Belgium, saying the plan is to sign two midfielders, with Kobbie Mainoo seen as untouchable and close to a new deal. Targets include Mateus Fernandes, Elliot Anderson, and Amadou Onana. So there's been a couple of medium to low sources, I would say, in my opinion, linking us with Onana. I'd want to see way more credibility when those stories come from before, getting giddy or angry or concerned whether we're going to go down that route or not. Now, another player from Aston Villa, though, who does seem to be doing the rounds. Now, this is really interesting, actually. Morgan Rogers. Get involved in the comments, firstly. Let me know what you think. Would you take Morgan Rogers? Because I've not really thought too hard about it, because the previous links have been like, not really believing the story. But this is coming from the Times, and the Times are a decent source as well, saying that Morgan Rogers looks likely to be at the centre of a transfer tug-of-war this summer after Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea renewed their interest. Aston Villa's valuation is likely to exceed £80 million. Rogers is open to leaving Villa. So there's an interesting story. Now, we know that we are looking for attackers. We know that we are looking to potentially bring someone in to play off of the left wing, with obviously links with Diamande, links with Njai. What about Rogers? What do we think about Rogers? Because he plays, can play off the left-hand side, can play as an attacking midfielder as well. So would offer you a little bit of variety. Could we be in a position where we're actually being sensible and trying to bring in potentially a Bruno Fernandes? I'm not saying, that you're not going to replace Bruno Fernandes with a player, right? But you're going to need to get someone to fill that sort of position as the attacking midfielder. Are they looking at a succession plan further down the line, maybe for someone like Morgan Rogers? I don't know. That's an interesting link, because it's a good source as well from the Times, suggesting that, us and a few other Premier League clubs might be interested in Rogers. 44 appearances, 10 goals, 7 assists this season. I said playing predominantly off the left. Can play centrally as well as like an attacking midfielder. I don't know. I don't know. It depends on the budget. It'd be a lot of money for that particular position. But so's Diamande. Diamande is going to be a lot of money, and Njai's not exactly going to be cheap neither to try and get from Everton. So who knows? Maybe one to watch. But get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think. I'd be really interested on Morgan Rogers. Good option, bad option, yay or nay. Let me know. Let me know what you think regarding that. There's been a few other links. Now, one of the areas that I've really wanted United to concentrate on for a number of years that we've always neglected, and we've missed out on some fantastic transfers, especially someone like Julian Alvarez, who scored an absolute banger last night against Barcelona in the Champions League, that was available from the South American League that Ralph Ragnick recommended that we never went for. And that particular market has always been one where we've just been notoriously bad at going for. But that seems to be changing. Obviously, we've got a Roscoe coming in, and it does feel there's been a few murmurings over the last couple of weeks that United are really trying to explore that market and exploit some of the talent over there a lot more. Been a couple of links to some interesting players. So Manchester United really like Independente Del Valle striker Juan Riquelme Angulo, who's 18. United are keeping an eye on him. A lot of European teams are also looking at him. He will leave the Ecuadorian side this summer. So that was broken from Ben Jacobs today. Now, I have absolutely zero idea who this is, but I am already excited because these are the sort of signings that I actually like us to be going out and getting for. These unknown gems plucked from, South America or African market or across Europe. I don't really care where it's from, but these sort of hidden gems that could go on to be something, that have talent and, we can nurture and develop, or if they don't work out, we can flip them for a bit of profit, because we still need that succession of young players to sell to boost our income and our earnings and stuff as well. So that's one to pay attention to. I'm pretty sure I've heard his name before as well in the sort of rumor mills, maybe from some South American sort of places, suggesting that actually United might be looking at like bringing in another young striker, and that excites me. I know nothing about the player. I've not done any research or anything like that, but already I'm thinking, yeah, at least this is a sign that we are looking and exploring this market, because there are bargains to be made, bargains to be found, and deals to be done if you've got the right scouting network, and that would be what Christopher Vivel is good at. So yeah, I champion it. I'm all for it. And there's been another link as well. So Manchester United and Chelsea will both try to move forward to sign Boca Junior attacking midfielder Thomas Aranda, 18 in June. Boca are on high alert and refusing to sell him. And again, not a player that I've done a ton of research on. Is an attack midfielder, can play off the wing as well on the left wing. That's come from a South American news outlet. I don't know the credibility of the source, but it's been doing the rounds from some good aggregator accounts as well. And again, I'm all for it. If we're in competition there with Chelsea for a South American, then Chelsea are clearly going to win that race, aren't they? Because they love nothing better than to overpay for these sort of players, stock them up. I mean, because they've only got a 40-man squad anyway, and 20 wingers. So clearly they need another one to come in. But if we're in competition with Chelsea, I don't fancy our chances of securing players like this if it's between us and Chelsea. But interesting profile. I'm encouraged by the fact that we are potentially looking to explore and exploit that market, because it's long overdue. We need to start looking at some of these young talents, these hidden gems that you can pluck and, like I said, either develop and sell, or develop and then you've got yourself a bargain into the first team. Hopefully a Roscoe can be that as well. Hopefully that's the one where the tables turn and we flip it around and we get a really, really top prospect that can stay with us and develop with us. But we'll obviously need to wait and see. And another player that fits that build a little bit would be Koulibaly. So Manchester United scouts are closely monitoring 18-year-old Werder Bremen centre-back Karim Koulibaly, apparently a very, very top young talent, a defender, can play in midfield as well. But apparently there were multiple teams, PSG, Bayern Munich, I think Tottenham and a few others were mentioned about, looking at this kid as well. And I wouldn't be against going for it. The more of these sort of profile of players that we look at and we go for, the better, in my opinion, because I just think, there's value for money to have, and it's about time we did start doing this. So as well, as exciting as it is when we're linked with, Andersons and Tonalis and Morgan Rogers and all of these sort of players, those sort of signings get me just as excited as well, because, it's long overdue for us to break through into a market and get a Moises Caicedo, because we were linked with him and we were interested in him. Clearly the scouts know what they're doing. It's just people at the club have never had the balls to follow through on those deals. So hopefully that table's turned and we can start getting involved in these sort of signings. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments down below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video. That's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.